Hi, I'm Herb Snitzer. I'm a photographer and I'm watching Mr. Media.
Today on Mr. Media, I'll talk to actress and comedian Geri Jewell, who you might recognize from recurring roles on TV shows as diverse as The Facts of Life and Deadwood. She's just published her autobiography, and it's fascinating. I'm Walking as Straight as I Can, Transcending Disability in Hollywood and Beyond. Stick around. When we get done, you'll believe a woman with cerebral palsy can fly. So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview. The show is brought to you today by Amazon.com, the world's greatest store for everything from books and movies to computers, TVs, and even my favorite soft drink, Pepsi Wild Cherry. Thinking about buying something online from Amazon or just want to do a little window shopping? You can save yourself a lot of money and help support Mr. Media, that's me, by clicking on one of the Amazon ads at MrMedia.com and start your shopping with us. Get yourself the new iPad or Kindle Fire. Feeling a little racy today? Amazon's got what you need to feel exciting and new, as they used to sing on The Love Boat. Remember, start your next shopping trip from the comfort of your own home, car, hotel, or office with Amazon.com at MRmedia.com. That's right, MrMedia.com. And folks, thanks for your support. Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of people who can't believe the same person could have starred on both Charlotte Ray's The Facts of Life and David Milch's Deadwood in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. All right, quick quiz. How many people do you know personally or have you ever known with cerebral palsy? All right, question number 2. How many people with CP have you ever heard of becoming a stand-up comedian? And finally, question number 3. How many people with CP have you ever heard of having a recurring part on 2, not 1, but 2 hit TV series? All right, I'll take a wild guess that few people can think of anyone as an answer to any of those questions. And let me just say that my guest today, Geri Jewell, is not your typical anything. Born with CP to a loving family that rejected a doctor's advice in the 1950s to institutionalize Geri for life, she worked hard not to be defined solely by her disability. And Geri's path forward began on the stage, of all places, of the Comedy Store on Hollywood's Sunset Boulevard, and eventually led to several seasons as Cousin Geri on NBC's top-rated The Facts of Life, and then HBO's cult favorite Deadwood, on which she played Jewel in Al Swearingen's popular whorehouse bar. Now, Geri recently published her autobiography, I'm Walking as Straight as I Can, Transcending Disability in Hollywood and Beyond, a title that references her battles with both CP and gender identity. Geri Jewell, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Geri, I was absolutely fascinated by the detail in your book, and I was kind of wondering, what was the hardest part of your story to tell?
There were many difficult parts to write about. I think the hardest part was my ex-husband.
Is that why there's a couple of blank pages?
Yeah, well, there's more than a couple.
Is that because it was emotionally hard or legally hard?
It was emotionally hard. I, I'm very grounded spiritually, and I did not want to cause any more pain than was already caused. And I truly still love him today, and I didn't want to do anything or say anything that was going to hurt. and but I needed to tell the truth because he was a very important part of my life for a long time.
But he just sort of pops up in the book. We don't get the backstory, as I guess they would say in Hollywood. He's just sort of there and difficult. So it's interesting. It certainly leaves the reader with more questions than answers, doesn't it?
Yeah, but in the following chapter of the one you're talking to, I did answer some of those questions.
Yeah, yeah. See, now yeah, I guess I could see that that was a difficult chapter, obviously, because as readers will find, there are several blank pages when you introduce him. It's an interesting literary technique. I don't think Dickens had thought of that, frankly.
Well, it it worked. I mean, it solved the word count problem.
Okay, all right. Interesting answer. I'll take that. Now, so, but Jerry, I mean, I was thinking that the most interesting books, as well as some of the more compelling comedians that we would go and see, they tend to be the ones that are as real as possible. And I don't think anyone could read this book of yours and not feel that they were touching an exposed nerve at times. I mean, these stories are really close to you, aren't they?
They are, but I have a feeling they are close to a lot of people. One of the reasons I chose to write the book was because I wanted people to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel during any of our struggles in life. You just have to keep moving forward.
I was thinking while I was reading the book, I was reminded of something that I did as a kid, and I hadn't thought of in 30 or 40 years, frankly. That was the cerebral palsy telethons that were held every year on TV. And I remembered I and my best friend Bruce, we would go door to door that weekend, and we would knock on people's doors, and we would collect for cerebral palsy. And then one of our parents every year would put us in the car, and we would go to wherever they had a local station, and we would take all the change and the dollar bills we collected and poured them in a bowl. And I never, and then we did it for a couple years, and never thought about it until I was reading your book, and I thought, oh my God, there was a point to all that. I mean,
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah. So anyway, I mentioned that in passing because I hadn't thought about it until I was reading your book, and you talk a little bit about UCP, and it's interesting. Now, I was kind of curious. A group like that, how do they feel about you now as an adult out there publicly? You've got your book, you've been on TV.
How does UCP feel about me?
Yeah, I mean, do they appreciate what you've accomplished? And
Oh, yeah, I have a wonderful relationship with UCP nationally and locally. Absolutely.
good.
And I still do a lot of work for them.
Oh, it's nice, and it was just amazing to me that actually, and that's why I said in the introduction to the show, how many people watching this or listening do you know someone personally with either CP or who have accomplished what you have? And I mean, I thought of myself, and I thought, I mean, CP really never touched me again from the time that we did those telethon collections door to door until really reading your book, and
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So anyway. And the other thing I wondered, at this point, have you heard from anyone that you wrote about in the book that maybe you hadn't been in contact with in a while?
Charlotte Ray.
Really?
Yeah, and Charlotte was very proud of me and commended me on the book. And it was really wonderful to get her support after I wrote that book. And Assad Kalada, who directed all my episodes of Facts of Life, told me how proud he was of me for writing the book.
And it's interesting because in Charlotte's case, she's written about in the book because there was someone between you who created a lot of tension and anxiety that didn't need to be there otherwise.
Absolutely, and it was a two-way street. And it wasn't until I started writing the book years later that I realized that this person was playing both of us, and we both suffered for it, both Charlotte and myself.
I'm really glad to hear that Charlotte's read the book and she now knows both sides of the story.
Hmm.
And what about Lisa Welchel, who was actually in the news this year, being on Survivor of all things?
Yes, and I'm very proud of Lisa. Lisa did read the book, and she acknowledged that what I wrote about her was true. And she, we have respect for one another, but Lisa, I don't think will ever accept my lifestyle because it goes against her religious beliefs, and that's fine. But there is a mutual respect for one another.
And I'm going to, I guess, interrupt a little bit there and say that what you're talking about is, while Facts of Life was on for a time, you and she were roommates.
Yes, we were.
Uh,
We were very good friends,
all right.
actually.
Jerry, I'll point out, and we'll come to another roommate shortly, but Jerry's had some very interesting roommates in her life. Lisa Welchel, who, if people don't quite remember Facts of Life, she played Blair, blonde hair, beautiful girl. Definitely one of the leads on the show. A lot of teenage boys remember her well, and she was a contestant on the most recent season of Survivor. They didn't know her as Blair. She just competed. They didn't find out
Yep.
until the end of the season. But you kind of hint in the book without being really direct. But I'm gathering her when you say her beliefs. You've come out in the book, if not before, as gay, right?
Yes, I have.
And that's
Yes.
the issue that Lisa has, right?
Yes, and it will always be an issue, I think, along her beliefs. There's nothing I can do about that, and that's okay. I love her as a person. She was a wonderful friend to me. And like I said, there is mutual respect for one another. But complete acceptance of me, no.
Well,
I don't think so.
I'm glad that you know that she read the book. It probably answered some questions in her mind over the years that maybe she wouldn't ask you, or she, wouldn't come out otherwise. And it's a very interesting. It's definitely an interesting story. I'm guessing you have a cat,
I do, and it's Juliet.
Juliet. All right. Well, I didn't want anyone to think I'm a dog person on my end, so I want everyone to know that Jerry has the cat. I have the dog.
I'm sorry.
No, that was me. And one of the okay, so one of the recurring themes in the book is really how eager you were in your youth to kind of be accepted either as part of one of the shows that you were on, or part of a social group or group of friends. And unfortunately, and we read it, it happens a lot, is that eagerness tends to lead you to be taken advantage of a lot in your
Yes.
career, either by a manager or so-called friends. And I got to tell you, I mean, I ached for you personally when I read those stories, especially as they kept happening.
Well, I know it's hard for some people to believe that someone can be as naive as I was, but I really was. And it took me a long time to understand. I mean, I went from being very sheltered in special ed and not living in the real world to all of a sudden being known to millions on a television show, another not real world. So there was no real world for me to grow in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does, and it's clear in the book. I mean, growing up, you went to special education schools up until pretty much the end of high school, I think. And your parents loved you very much. Your sister Gloria,
Yep.
particularly, was involved, younger sister. But you make the pretty remarkable move of leaving your home as a late teenager after high school and moving to Hollywood, of all places. I mean, probably the least safe and inviting place for someone, with the disability that you were coping with. And there you are in Hollywood, and people, you would think that maybe your situation would bring out the best in people, and it did in some people, but it brought out the worst in other people.
It did bring out the best in some people, and you're going to get both. the challenge is to sift through them and to stick by the good people, which I do today. But, they're always out there, they're waiting.
Yeah. It's some of those stories are so painful. But there's one story that I really liked, and that was, and it's kind of funny in a way. Well, it is funny. It's as you were kind of working your way up from in the Comedy Store and on the comedy circuit, and establishing yourself as a stand-up comedian, you encounter Robert Schimmel, of all people. Of all people,
Oh,
Robert
yeah,
Schimmel.
yes.
And folks who've been watching or listening to Mr. Media for a while, he was Schimmel before about a year and a half before he passed, was on this show twice. I had him on for about an hour promoting his book Cancer on $5 a Day.
Yep, I read that book.
Well, and at the end of that interview, he said, "This was fun. I'd really like to come back." And I thought, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." So 3 weeks later, he came back and did another hour. And so when I read that you not just met Schimmel, you lived with Schimmel, and where did you live?
I rented the closet under the stairs.
J.K. Rowling has nothing on you putting Harry Potter in the closet under the stairs. You were there first.
I was. But Robert didn't have anything to do with that. He didn't want me to rent the closet. I wanted to rent the closet.
and explain to people about the closet, why you were so comfortable in the closet. And this isn't a gay thing at all. Why were you comfortable in the closet?
It really isn't a gay thing. It was because I always liked security in small places. I mean, I was in an incubator for the first 3 months of my life. So actually, if you think about it, it was my security. And I could go in there and be safe and no one would hurt me. And it was easy to clean my closet. There wasn't a lot of housework.
Yes, but how was the TV reception in the closet? That's what I want to know.
I didn't have a TV in the closet, but my parents came up for one of my birthdays early on, and they bought me a birthday gift. And I thought it was a TV, Bob. I thought, wow, they got me a TV for my closet. And I opened it up, and it wasn't a TV. It was a fan for the summer months.
Well, at least they were thinking of your comfort.
They were.
But
they were, and it spoke volumes. It said that, they accepted my journey. They didn't always understand it, but okay, if this is what you want to do, it's your life.
And we just want to clarify, Robert did not like you living in the closet, but you insisted.
Oh, I did. He thought it was nuts. But he did get a lot of flack from the other comedians in the closet.
And how does one come to be roommates with Robert Schimmel? How did that happen?
I was looking for a place to live. We met at the Improv. Yeah, we met at the Improv or the Comedy Cave. I think it was the Comedy Cave, come to think of it. And he was looking for a roommate because he was separated from his wife and he needed some extra income. And I told him that I was looking for a roommate, a place to live. And he said, well, why don't you come and look at my place? And I did rent the bedroom for a little while until he had a third roommate move in. And it was the three of us in the two-bedroom apartment, so I decided to take the closet.
And I have to ask, tell me, you got to know a side of Robert Schimmel, who is a legend, obviously a comedy legend, and people just adore this man. What was he like? What was the Robert Schimmel that you got to know? What was he like?
He was a wonderful, wonderful friend. He was very supportive. He had a lot of passion, and he really was a genius. I mean, I think his career could have gone farther if people recognized how brilliant he was. And I know that a lot of his comedy was kind of blue.
Kind of.
Okay, I'm being nice. But when he was at home, he was just a regular guy. He didn't talk that way all the time. Only on stage, really.
Wow. And part of that, I'm kind of thinking, well, you were roommates with Robert. Later, you roomed with Lisa Welchel. And some people would think, well, to have a roommate with CP, that would be difficult. But it doesn't sound like that was an issue at all.
Oh, that was never an issue. It's not difficult. The only thing is you want me to stay away from stuff that's breakable. You know, like stay away from the wine glass. Okay, sure.
And beware, apparently from the book, I gather, beware of sudden movements with a glass in your hand.
Yeah, you know, stuff like that.
Never know when you might get soaked.
Oh, yeah, I did. I almost choked Dave Madden at a dinner. He grabbed my glass in midair.
That was, and let me just point out for folks, Dave Madden was Reuben Kincaid on The Partridge Family.
Yes.
And that was when you were still one degree removed from your childhood love, David Cassidy, who you met later on.
Yeah, that is true. I admit it.
Well, let me ask you another question about the CP for people who may not be familiar with it. Can you explain a little bit about how it affects you, like day to day? Or, I mean, people who are watching the video, they can see, some of the involuntary movements of your head, but how else does it actually affect you?
Well, it sends abnormal messages to my body from my brain that aren't supposed to be sent, like the movement you're seeing that's not supposed to be there. If I want my body to move properly, I have to really, really concentrate on that, because my natural flow, if it'll do anything it wants to do. So I'm fighting the messages internally. When I walk, I have to pay attention to what my legs are doing, because if I don't, they have a mind of their own.
So there's no such thing as a simple stroll through the park for you?
Not really. Not really. In fact, relaxing my body is the hardest thing for me to do, because I'm always controlling it, if you think about it. Especially in my youth, I was in a constant state of isometrics, going against the movement. So I was very physically strong in my youth.
Well, and it was interesting, you talk about when you were a teenager that being on a skateboard or a bicycle gave you a freedom of movement that maybe you didn't enjoy just walking.
It did. I mean, when you're on a bike, and I learned how to ride a bike because I had brothers and a sister, How can you not learn how to ride a bike? Now, if I did not have Gloria, my younger sister, my parents probably would not have let me learn how to ride a bike. But you can't keep one kid down and let the other one go. And so I did learn how to ride a bike, and the magic of that was that when I was on a bike, I didn't have CP. I was like any other kid on a bike.
Can I tell you what made me think of? And you tell me if this is a bad analogy, but I'm gonna ask you. I was thinking of years ago. There was the singer Mel Tillis, of all people, who, when he would speak, he stuttered terribly, but when he sang, he could sing perfectly. And when I read your description of the difference between walking and, say, riding a bike, it actually seemed very similar to me. Is that fair?
That's a good analogy. Yes, absolutely.
Good. I'm glad, because that's what I thought of, and I thought, well, maybe I'm off track there with that.
No, you are. That's a very good analogy.
Right. I also want to point out, in fairness to you, and to let people know, you are a bit hearing impaired.
Yes.
And
a bit.
A bit. Okay, quite a bit. And you've got your hearing aids turned way up. And
yeah, I do.
And before we started, you had planned to look at the screen so you could also read my lips. as we went, and I
Yes,
discouraged you from that so people could see you looking at them. So, in
I
fairness, and
know.
you've done a wonderful job. I mean, you clearly have heard everything I've said, but I wanted people to know that you normally you would be listening and looking at my lips to make sure that you were getting everything correctly.
It's taking a lot for me not to look at you because it's just out of habit. I read lips, so I'm like, don't look, don't look,
Plus my
don't look.
plus my handsomeness would be too overwhelming for the conversation. You just want to you just want to not focus on my image, I think. So so Jerry, let's before we wrap up, let's talk about the two shows that you've been on, and they're so different. I mean, you've made a lot of TV appearances, but I think more people will know you either for the run on The Facts of Life in the '80s, or 20 years later, Deadwood. And I wondered. What you remember best about what was the good of Facts of Life? What was the kind of the best of that for you?
I think the very first episode that I ever did was the most powerful Fact of Life episode I ever did.
Hmm.
And it was memorable. It will be in my heart. We filmed it right before Christmas, so every time I hear Christmas music, I think of that episode.
Oh.
And it aired on Christmas Eve, so it has a very special place in my heart.
Hmm.
And it was a dream come true.
And you were on, I'm trying to remember, 3 or 4 seasons.
4 seasons.
4 seasons. That's it's pretty remarkable. Kind of a recurring character. You would show up maybe 3 or 4 times a season, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
very nice. And then, many years later, you have this moment. That's okay.
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
I'll turn it off.
Okay.
I'll call him back. I don't know who it is.
Well,
Are you trying to call me too?
yeah, no, I was just going to say we can rule out me. It was not me. It was not me. But so you got Deadwood in a very strange way. You actually met the creator of Deadwood, David Milch, who people didn't watch Deadwood. They certainly know NYPD Blue. You met him online at a pharmacy of all things.
I did. And it was in 2002. I had had spinal cord surgery from C1 to C7 in 99.
Mm.
And I honestly thought that my career was over. I did not think that I would ever be back on TV. And I questioned whether I could do stand-up. And I was standing in line at this yuppie-buppie pharmacy in Santa Monica, and this man turned around, he recognized me, and he said, "Oh my God, I love you. I'm a huge fan of yours." And I said, "Thank you." And he said, "But I haven't seen you on TV in a long time." And I said, "True." And he said, "Do you want a television series?" What? And he said, "I just signed a contract with HBO. My name is David Milch, and I'm doing this new Western called Deadwood." And I looked up as far as my titanium neck would let me, and I said, "God, you have a real quirky sense of humor." I mean, I'm standing here with a titanium neck, dependent on Botox for chronic pain, and I have CP, and David Milch wants me to ride a horse. And he wrote his phone number on a prescription pad for an antidepressant, told me to call him, and we met 3 weeks later, and I was cast as Jewel on Deadwood.
Now, I have to say that the people who've cast you in these shows have not been particularly creative with your names. Uh,
Well, well, I wrote the backstory for that character, actually, and I wrote her name Crazy Kate.
mhm.
And Jewel, well, David didn't like Crazy Kate. He said, "I want to name her Jewel." And that immediately sent me back to Facts of Life. Oh, God, I was Cousin Jerry, and now I'm Jewel. And then I thought, well, that's a sign that I'm in the right place at the right time. And, there's kind of a magical, mystical energy to it. And I'm going to let another executive producer know what my middle name is. And then I'll get a third television series.
And so tell everyone, Jewel was Jewell cleaned up around the bar, and it was is Al Swearingen, or as everyone called him, Swearingen, right,
Yes,
right. And
yes.
I mean, your character basically pushed a broom or mop or cleaned up around the bar. Um, I cannot honestly remember. Was Jewell was she one of the whores in the bar? Was she just cleaning up the bar? I can't actually remember that part.
She was not one of the
That's what I
whores.
thought.
And I think it was because I think if Deadwood had not had been canceled, they probably would have found out that my relationship with Swearingen was actually closer than people thought. I think that they were actually sister and brother
Oh,
because he protected her, and I don't think he would have allowed that. I mean, he could call her every name in the book, but nobody else could. There was a double standard. And if you remember, there was a scene where I was supposed to clean up this bloody mess after someone got killed the night before, scrubbing blood, and I did a horrible job at it. And instead of scolding me and making me go down and do it right, he got on his hands and knees and scrubbed it himself.
I remember.
I mean, what does that tell you? You know, there was a soft side to him, and he also respected me, but he didn't want anybody else to know that.
So you're thinking that they were brother and sister. I was thinking maybe it was father and daughter.
Maybe. I was thinking more brother and sister.
Now, I was thinking if it was sister, then she would have a little piece of the business or maybe something different. But daughter with the disability, which of course they didn't have a name for back in Deadwood, I thought maybe, I don't know. It's interesting though.
Maybe.
So many questions go
Actually,
unanswered in that show.
yes, I know, and it deserved a fourth season, and we've been waiting forever for the movies, and I don't know if they're going to happen or not because it's so hard to get that many actors together in time again.
Yeah, I've had John Hawkes has been on the show with me, and Anna
Oh, I love John.
John was great, and Anna Gunn was on the week before Breaking Bad, and I know they
Oh,
both said they would love to do that again. But as we get further and further
I
apart,
know.
and there's a lot of Emmys and Oscars piling up for some of them, it's going to be harder and harder, I guess.
I know.
And I gotta ask you, can you ever say the word cocksucker without smiling?
You know, I can't say
You can't say it
it.
at all?
No, and I never had to say that
No.
line. I did have to say the F word several times, and I got pretty good at it. I mean, there was one scene where I was knocking on the door, telling Al to open the door, and I said the F word again and again and again in a monologue. And I remember the script person coming up to me, and, the director would yell, cut, and she would come up to me and said, hey, you did 2 extra F words. You don't need to say 7, it's just 5.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. Now, do you have a favorite line of dialogue that you remember from that show? Was it that, or was it something else?
I have so many sweet memories from that show. I think one of the lines that will always be with me is the one that David Milch gave me like 3 minutes before filming. He gave it to me backstage. He said, remember this line and say it. That's Milch for you. And the line was, you're as limber as a forest creature.
That's nice.
To the docks, dancing.
Ah,
And so he thought of that line backstage right before we went on camera to film. It was a line that I had to add immediately. And I was glad that I was able to remember on short notice. And that's kind of the deal when you work with David Milch, because his brain, another brilliant man, brilliant and a genius, you got to keep up with his pace. And sometimes it was very, very fast and unpredictable.
Well, and you mentioned the doctor who was played by Brad Dourif. Some of the best scenes on the show, I think, were between you and Brad. I mean, it was just very touching for a show that was very harsh otherwise, very violent, very foul-mouthed, and then there's the two of you.
I know, and I think David knew intuitively that Deadwood is a very dark show, and I think his reasoning for casting me was he wanted me to bring a little light to a dark show, and I think I did that.
I agree. Well, Geri, what's you're out? Obviously, you're promoting this new book. I'm walking as straight as I can. Is there anything else we should know? Anything else going on right now?
Well, I'm working on a web series right now called Child of the 70s, which is Michael Vaccaro's show, and it's kind of a fun show, and we're working on that. And I'm also working on the stage version of my book, I'm Walking as Straight as I Can, as a one-woman show. Hopefully we'll be up and running by this summer.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's very exciting. Well, folks, listen, you can find I'm Walking as Straight as I Can, Transcending Disability in Hollywood and Beyond, the new autobiography by Geri Jewell, written with, I'll give him credit, Ted Nicholson, did a great job.
Yep.
It's in great bookstores everywhere, or you can order it right now at a great price at mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. If you're watching the show, look below the video. You'll see a little image of the book. You can just click on it right now. It'll take you to Amazon. You can order the book. Geri, do you have a website, or are you involved with Facebook or Twitter, any of those things?
I am involved on Twitter, my own name, Facebook, my own name. I have a Facebook fan page. I also have a Facebook I'm Walking as Straight as I Can page. And the website, gerijewell.com, is being doctored at the time, but it will be ready soon.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that all those links are on the page so people can just click on them and go right to find you that way.
Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure. And Geri, I really enjoyed the book. It was a fascinating read. And thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Thank you. My pleasure. And this is the first web media interview I've done.
Not too painful, I hope.
It was cool. I could do it again.
Okay, well, let's keep that in mind. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. You can see and hear almost 1,000 Mr. Media interviews by visiting our main site, mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. Or check out the more than 200 video interviews on the Mr. Media radio site on YouTube. And I'd sure appreciate if you'd show some love for Mr. Media's advertisers, including Stitcher. Apple named Stitcher a top 5 news app of 2011. It's a free mobile app for your smartphone or tablet that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You can listen whenever you want to more than 5,000 shows, get customized recommendations, and discover what your friends are listening to. My own list of Stitcher favorites is pretty eclectic. I start my day with an hour of MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Then it's the latest 2-minute update from the Onion News Network. After that, I'll listen to WTF with Mark Maron, Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and excerpts from E's Chelsea Lately and The Soup with Joel McHale. Also in regular rotation on my Stitcher playlist, the BS Report with ESPN's Bill Simmons, the TechCrunch headlines, and the Don Geronimo Show. The latest episodes of each show, whether originating from broadcasts, cable TV, radio syndication, or podcasts, are continuously updated. Stitcher is a free app for your iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Fire, BlackBerry, Droid, and more. And show your support of Mr. Media by getting, did I mention it's free? The app at stitcher.com/Mr. Media. That's stitcher.com/MRmedia. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. We're also supported by Audible. Check out Audible's 30-day trial membership and download the audiobook version of the book everyone's been talking about, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Sign up for your free trial today at audible.com/radio. Again, audibletrial.com/radio. And finally, if you need a disc jockey for a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, or just a big old party, please consider calling 1-800-DIAL-DJs, the party authority for all your party entertainment needs. You can call 1-800-DIAL-DJs or go to their website, 1-800-DIAL-DJs.com, and tell them Mr. Media sent you. And thanks for listening. Today's episode of Mr. Media Interviews is brought to you by GoDaddy.com. You know GoDaddy.com from their wild and sexy commercials, but isn't it time you actually test drove their web hosting and domain registration services yourself? For a limited time, Mr. Media listeners can save 10% on the already low price of web hosting services at GoDaddy.com by entering the promo code POD4 at checkout. Again, that's 10% off web hosting when you go to GoDaddy.com and enter the promo code POD4, that's P-O-D, the number 4, at checkout.